Good evening, everyone. This is Rodney with the Triton Wave updates for Wednesday, August 1st, 2012. Let's take a look at let's start off with the ES. Things were a little bit more active today. The ES is T1 is solidly above zero, T2 is approaching above zero, T3, T4 is halfway above zero, T5, the long wave is still above zero. Does not mean that we can't come back and test some of these areas back around the 89 exponential moving average. If we look over here on the right hand chart, as I said last night, in the last hash mark on the candle after the close of trade, it went below zero. The time frame I use is still 3:15. So you can see that actually at about 8:30 in the morning, let's make this a little bit larger. The first hash mark was below. It continued down. It went sideways, up a little bit. During the night, I think it was up 300, 400, 500 points, but it came down. Nighttime trading is very thin. It usually doesn't reflect what's going on during the daytime. But now T1 on the 21-minute chart, cash chart, is below zero, and T2, let's see where that went. Okay, T2 did the same thing at 3:09 that T1 did last night at 3:09. So it's basically starting to move down, which shows that these trend lines up here, this up and down nice snake-like movement, has been a border for the upside in an upwardly moving trend. So there's no reason for this not to do a 50% retracement down to like the 1350 area. If and when it does that, I would be surprised if it didn't do that. If it does that, then we'll have to examine it to see if it bounces off the 377 or whether this is ready to take off again. Or it might come down to this extension of the, let's extend this out a little bit here. It might come down and test this somewhere in the next 3 or 4 days. I'm going to make the left-hand chart a 21-minute chart so you can see by comparison what's going on. And the right-hand chart is the trading chart. So this is like a day trading chart for the ES. Right now the ES is down 200 points. It's 7 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central Time. This is the 8:30 mark. I can send that out. So this entire screen is today's trading. And there was a nice ebb and flow of a buy, a buy here, a sell here, a buy here, a sell here. Now some of these buys are near the top, so you can actually move down to a 987 chart, and that will capture more of what more closely the crossovers, especially on T2. So the rule of thumb is, when on the left-hand chart, when T1 on the 21-minute chart is below zero, you don't want to take these up moves. This is where you close out your short position on the ES. So you would close it out here, wait for it to come back down again, and open it back up here, and we are still down on the day, and after hours it still has not crossed over. And this is a live chart. It's a tick chart that goes 24 hours. If we look at Goldman Sachs on the left-hand side, T1 on the daily chart is still above zero, and now actually it's completely above zero. The first wave is above, the second wave is above. T2 is still below zero, T1 is half and half, T4. Goldman looks like it wants to go up a little bit more. But you have to make sure that if you're following a trend to the upside, that the 21 minute is doing is in the same direction. So we can use the daily as an anchor, and because the 21 minute I'm sorry, yeah, because the 21 minute was below zero here, that's probably why it went sideways, and it also started going down at 12:45 today. Goldman, you can see even better if you want to day trade this. The 610 charts. Let me see if this 610 chart is kind of sloppy, but if you look at you can't really use T1 and T2 rarely on small tick charts for day trading. You have to move down to T3. This moved down actually on the 17th, so that was like a week and a half ago. Moved up at 90. At 90, Goldman Sachs was selling for 93 on July 23rd, and it just went back. So if you're following one chart that seems to have that pattern, and each chart is going to have its own pattern. So sometimes T2 is going to work, sometimes T3 is going to work. It depends on the time frame, it depends on the stock, it depends who's trading it. Right now, T3 is starting to go below zero at noontime today, completely below zero at quarter to 3, and which means on the left-hand chart on a daily chart, it looks like it's probably going to come down to at least 98 and maybe 97, which would be a 50% retracement. So it doesn't mean it's a very it may be a very short-term sell, but it's not something that you would want to short overnight. Okay, Baidu on the left-hand chart, on the daily chart, it's firmly the T1 is firmly above zero for the last week, and it seems to be stalled in the last cluster of exponential moving averages right here at about 122 to 125. In the meantime, the daily chart, I'm sorry, the 21-minute chart, the T1 is a little bit iffy on this because they're happening after the fact, because Baidu's jumping all over the place. Especially, I guess when they came out with earnings, it kind of threw the chart off. However, if you look at T3 in this, it's nice and rhythmic above. It lets you catch it as it's happening. Below, let me see here. At 113, it goes below on July 9th, and July 18th, it goes above. So this is still above zero until we get to today at 1:45, and it's starting to look a little bit weak in the short term, even though the longer term daily is looking okay. So keep that in mind if you want to buy some puts on this. It's for a very short term play, but since T1, T2, T3 is going below zero, this might be good for a 4-point play, but just be careful because T1 is firmly above, and one more hash mark. It looks like one more day on this, it'll be completely above zero. So I'm looking for this to possibly break out, but not before it comes down a little bit. Caution is that since this is an upside move on the daily, you want to be very, very careful about shorting anything through here. It's better to wait and see what happens and maybe pick some up at around 315, 316. Okay, Netflix crossed zero on T1 on the daily on the left-hand chart, and it took off like from 67 to 80, and then stayed sideways at the 89 exponential moving average, and then tanked on the earnings. I actually thought this was going to come back up, but this is one of those situations where even though T1 on the 21 is showing that it might pop, it did pop a little bit, but then it came right back down again. So I don't have a good feeling about this one way or the other. It just seems to it seems that it wants to keep going lower, and it's not showing where it's going because the price is king here, and even though the waves are curving over like on T2, the stock is doing nothing, which is a huge red flag for the upside. Okay, let's take a look at Apple. Apple daily. It's getting to be a box play here because it's let me put some lines up here. Oops. All right. So it looks like it's trying to get up to on the daily up to 617, 620 area. And if you recall, I said last night that when it was here, let's bring this over and see what it actually looked like before this took off. It looked to me because the wave was not, because the C wave, I'm sorry, not the C wave. Because T5 was below 0, I thought that if T1 on Apple starts rolling over and T5 is still below 0 as an anchor, then it would be a good short. So the key is that you have to go in the direction of the wave, and the short-term wave was up as of July 27th, right in here. And actually, it took off, and now it's starting to roll over a little bit, but I need something clearer to let me know when to get in on the short side. For right now, it looks like it come down to 595, or it could just keep working itself up. This is an incredible move on. This is an Apple move from 573 to 610. Nothing keeps going up. I mean, it's folly to assume it may do one of these on the left on that it did in June, but it's already kind of done that in a much shorter period of time. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think this is not the time to get into Apple. You have to wait till it retreats a little bit. And by the time it retreats, the 21 may be below 0, and it might be a good time to get in on the short side. By the way, I love playing options, and I love the short side because you can make profits in it at a much, much higher rate. Also, I'm switching to the daily. Well, let's do the 21. Okay, so the 21 on the left-hand side is all this move to the upside, and actually on the 1597 tick chart on Apple, if you look at the longer wave on T5, it's almost in sync with the one on T1 on the 21 minute. So this 1597 tick compared to a 21 minute. So this moves up above 0 and completely above 0 here. It's still above 0. It looks like it wants to take a little pause because this is at T3 is about T1, T2 are below 0, T3 is about to go below 0, so this actually could take a small hit and still be okay. Depending on when you play it. Depending on how you want to play it. If you wanted to come here and place some puts on this, I would have a target of 600, 595. But keep in mind the daily and the 21 minute are still on the upside. Okay, I'm looking at the gold shares now, GLD on the left-hand side. I made a note the other day that it looked like it was that T1 was crossing over to zero, so it has an upside bias to it. But in the meantime, T1 and T2 have now crossed below zero. So if you're going to take a position in GLD to the upside, at least wait until the waves on the short 21-minute chart are in sync with the waves T1, T2 on the daily. That way you won't have any big surprises. Okay, looking at Google, Google crossed, T1 is completely above zero, T2 is now completely above zero, even the larger wave on T2 is above zero as of, let me see, as of today. So it doesn't mean there won't be any retracement. And again, this whole move from July 13th from the bottom is reflected on T1 on the 21-minute cash price. So you want to be in sync with the market. So if you bought it here, covered it here, because you don't know if it's going to go down and take a breather, and the most you would have missed is like 4 or 5 points if you're short-term trading it. If you're swing trading it, then you can stay in this the whole time on the left-hand chart and ride it up. But if you're just in it for a few days or playing options, then you'd want to get out here and you'd buy the T1 crossing over zero a couple days ago at 614, and you would have gotten a pretty good run out of it because it is in sync with the direction on the daily on Google. Okay, if you remember the other night I said that the T1 on MasterCard is looking a little bit iffy, and even though this is like a 14 days of candles, it's mostly boxed in by 450 on the downside on the upside and 406 on the downside. So it actually is using the 144 exponential moving average as a base to jump off of. So it was looking a little bit iffy, and I mentioned that T5 has this nice pattern of higher highs and higher lows as this moves up. That pattern is now broken with this approaching zero. So if you just wanted to rely on the 21-minute, the 21-minute pattern is going in this somewhat S pattern. Looks like a sine curve. Let me see here. And it went above zero on July 25th, and now it's below zero completely on today, July 31st. And it looks like it's not going to take much for the T2 to go down below zero. So this could be a play, maybe a 50-cent retracement from the top before it starts back up again, if it starts back up again. Let's do it to here. So about it's right now at 436. So I'm thinking 50% is 424 if you cut off these big extensions here. Somewhere in this 424, 430 area. And then of course if T1 continues down and rolls T2 into below zero, and that rolls T3 into below zero, if all these keep rolling below zero in sequence from T1, T2, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then the ballgame changes. Then you have to start looking for anchors on a longer time frame, which is the daily. And if that keeps happening with MasterCard and all these fall below zero, then you're going to see This short wave on T5 on the daily move below zero, it completely changes the picture. Well, that's what I have for tonight. Let's take one more look at the ES. We started off, the ES was down 200. Now it's down 325. Let's get some a live picture here. So this. So it's basically taken. It's almost taken out the lows for tonight, and the lows for the day. Let me see if it took out the lows from the overnight session. It did. It actually took out the lows for the overnight session. So that we may have a continued. We may have a washout with this. This today may have been turnaround Tuesday, as a suggested possibility of. So I actually would not be surprised at all if we try filling this gap, this peak here, down here, to about 50% retracement would be like 1354, just eyeballing it. That's all I have for tonight. Have a good evening and good trading, and I'll see you at the next update.